Edition. We wanted to start with something special, and we opened with the live recording of Lift Every Voice and Sing from our January 26, 2019 premiere of the 400-year suite at the Lincoln Theater in Columbus, Ohio. That featured Dr. William Minifield on the piano, Dean Hewlett on the bass, Eddie Bayard on tenor saxophone, and it's how we closed out the concert. And Ruth and I thought it would be good to do something special today to mark the occasion of Juneteenth, and we thought that the montage with the music would really kind of set the tone and really help us center. And in continuing to do that, we want to honor our ancestors before we get into the discussion about Juneteenth. So put your ancestors' names in the chat, and we will call them out and say Ashe after we play the ancestral drum call. ancestor drum call. Hmm? Michael Ashe. Willis Sanders Sr. Ashe. And Willis Sanders Jr. Ashe. Hmm? Frank Hubbard Ashe. John and Fanny Brandon Ashe. Ed Bell Ashe. Edna Bell Ashe. Charles Bell Ashe. William Bell Ashe. George Bell Ashe. Mike Bell Ashe. Danielle Bell Ashe. Luke Small Ashe. Gladys and Carlton Johnson Ashe. Carl and Lorraine Dickerson Ashe. Ashe-o, 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 for all of the ancestors, especially on a day like today, where we're celebrating Juneteenth, Freedom Day. It's a day where on June 19th, 1865, enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas, realized that they were free because they got word from General Gordon Granger. Sorry, can't read my own handwriting. Now, Emancipation Proclamation happened on January 1st, 1863, right? And that is technically the day where slaves were emancipated federally, right? But it took 2.5 years for the word to reach Galveston, Texas. And, you know, that's interesting in and of itself, which makes this day so complex. Because Emancipation Proclamation happens January 1, 1863, which is where we get watch night service from, where African Americans who go to church, or even those who don't, will often gather together, whether it's in a church or a home, and bring in the new year together, right? Waiting on Freedom Day. And so that happens, and it's not like immediately we were free, not like immediately we were enfranchised, right? And then 2 years later in Galveston, 2.5 years later, that's how long it took the internet to work and get the word to those folks down there. The interesting thing that happened then is that General Granger, when he gave notice that slavery was now illegal in the United States, he also made an appeal, for all intents and purposes, ordered the now formerly enslaved to stay on the plantations and work for wages, right? So that's like saying you get a raise, but your life doesn't really change, right? And then those who wanted to leave, and there are stories that many folks were leaving as he was making this announcement. But as they tried to leave the plantations, many were killed, many were captured, and the plantation owners, formerly slave owners, did everything they could do to keep their power over these folks, to keep the profits rolling from the plantation, right? Not just by hook and by crook, but by force. So it makes this day complicated, because that's why we ended that montage with a slide that says free-ish, right? And if you were to see, if you're familiar with that image, it says free-ish since 1865, because technically we're not enslaved, but what does it mean to not be free, even when physically you have control over yourself, right? There are so many ways in which we don't have control over our bodies. We can jump whenever we want to jump. We can get in a car and drive across the country or fly across the world, but we cannot keep police from killing us. We cannot keep racism from killing us with respect to social determinants of health, and how all of that stress and pressure of facing racism in America, deal with that. I can't put any closer. So it's complicated, right? So I'm trying to catch up to my notes now. Juneteenth also happened 2 months after Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox, Virginia, and it really is a sacred time for me personally to mark and recall the work of black liberation, right? Not just the abolitionists and slavery, but everything that's happened since. Immediately following the Civil War, we entered into the phase of Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. 1877 is when political will shifted, right? So between 1865 and 1877, you have a lot of political engagement by formerly enslaved Africans in America. We have the first congressmen, we have the first mayors, we have all kind of civic political engagement. But that all is probably more likely due to the first time Africans could vote in America and the presence of the U.S. Army enforcing the laws of emancipation. In 1877, all of that political will shifts, and I might get this wrong, but I think the president at that time is Andrew Jackson, but he draws the troops home, brings the troops home, and that's when the South actually wins the Civil War, right? They made a deal, power, it happens, and when you don't have it, you become a victim of it. And in 1877, when the demands of power required that Africans in America be put on the table again and be enslaved by another name, which is what happened during convict leasing and everything that happened after 1877, we get what's called the nadir, N-A-D-I-R. It's what's called by many scholars the worst time in slave relations, race relations in American history after slavery, right? This is the time of all the lynchings. This is the time of Jim Crow laws. It's a dark time in the South and in the North for black people in America who thought that after slavery, everything was going to get better. And it did for a short time. But again, because we did not have complete enfranchisement, that we still did not gain the power to bring that to bear. That's not to say that we didn't develop economies that worked, right? We absolutely did. In the late 19th and early 20th century, there were several communities around the country, from Greenwood, Oklahoma, to parts of North Carolina, outside of Durham, Rosewood in Florida. All of those communities were burned to the ground because they were in direct economic competition with their white counterparts, right? So we did get a good start, so to speak, even though we didn't get our 40 acres and a mule, we were still making a way. It's domestic terrorism that came to bear on us, and we just didn't have enough guns to support ourselves. A lot of folks have made the argument that if we took up arms for our cause, then things would be different. And I'm not saying we shouldn't arm ourselves and protect ourselves as it relates to our Second Amendment rights. But I can say that in our history, we have actually defended our property, we've defended our families, and it didn't turn out the way a lot of contemporary folks who make that claim did, for the simple fact that there was the force of law, overwhelming force, and we've never had an army, the likes of the American Army, to support our liberty, right? So there's so much that this day brings to my mind that I have to think through or feel the need to think through, reconcile, in order to continue to do the work, right? It is Freedom Day in the sense that federally folks became free, but they were not wholly free. They were not free to be their optimized self. They were not free to be who they were in every aspect of their humanity. And we still aren't. So, we celebrate freedom that we have that's different from slavery, but we also celebrate what we see as possible. And that's what makes black people special to me. I'm going to play something. a little Juneteenth celebrating music there. All right. So, in all this reflection around Juneteenth, it begs the question, what does it mean to be free? Not just free in the sense that you can participate in the fullness of the American construct, but free, period, right? Remember, a few weeks ago, we were talking about power. And in that definition of power, we said that we took Dr. Wade Noble's definition that power is the ability to define reality for oneself and others and make those folks think that it's a definition of their own choosing, right? We all think the sky is blue. We all think the sky is blue. I've never met anybody, when I asked them what color is the sky, they said purple. Everybody knows that it's blue. We all have chosen to accept that reality, right? Now, whoever defined that reality for us is the person that really had the power, right? But we all choose that. So what does it mean for black people to really be free? What reality do we choose here in this moment? This is the question, that not only we, but America has been struggling with since 1865. And, we have not reached a consensus, but I don't know that we absolutely need a consensus. We just have to understand collectively what that means for all of us, right? Because destiny is different for everyone, but freedom is shared, right? I don't think that my freedom means that I need to or have to in any way dictate what freedom means to you, right? As long as we're free to walk in our own purpose and our own destiny, then I'm okay with that. And if those destinies align, then that's even better, right? Reverend Dr. William Barber said that he thinks that in this moment we are in a third Reconstruction, right? A third opportunity for the country to construct itself in a way that is equitable and inclusive. Why the third? The first Reconstruction was literally Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. The second, arguably, is in the mid-60s, when we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. That was an opportunity for the country to really redefine its culture and move away from racism and slave, or what Dr. Ibram Kendi calls racist ideas, to more equitable ideals, ideas, and culture, right? But we didn't. So Reverend Dr. William Barber suggests that this might be a third opportunity. Dr. Mark Anthony Neal at Duke has suggested in a recent New York Times article by Derek Bryson that this feels a little different because many black Americans feel as though this is the first time in a long time that they have been heard across the culture, right? So Dr. Barber thinks this is a possible third Reconstruction. Dr. Mark Anthony Neal thinks that because black American voices are being heard, it presents a different opportunity than we've had in recent history, at least since the civil rights movement of the middle 20th century. Many have expressed similar sentiments, but most have failed to substantively outline what freedom for black people and those who descend from Africa through the institution of American slavery should and could be. Right? So what does that mean to be in a third Reconstruction? What does it mean to have your voices heard? What are the outcomes of those ideas? To me, this question of what it means to be fully human, to live into the fullness of what it means to be healthy, happy, and whole, means that we are active participants in the liberation of African peoples across the globe. What does that mean? It means that, to me, freedom means that we have the choice to not only engage without feeling the fear of harm. And engage could be anything. It could be walking across the street. It could be sleeping in your bed. It could be driving and getting stopped by the police. Engage, right? Without the fear of death just because you're black. And then it also means that we have an obligation to extend our freedom to the rest of our people in the diaspora. Now, that's an interesting thing, and that's piggybacking off of something my father said a couple of weeks ago, that because we descend from the first humans, Africans on the continent, everyone is in the African diaspora. And because we remain connected to the core of our humanity, even through the trauma of slavery and everything that's happened since, it is in many ways up to us to lead other people to their humanity. Right? Now, whether you agree with that or not, I would argue that just you doing what you want to do for you and your family is an example for someone who hasn't figured that out yet. So even if you're not actively participating in the liberation of people, let alone black people, your living out your freedom is an example for someone who might still be chained psychologically and otherwise, right? Here's an interesting perspective that a lot of folks don't think about. The largest economy, and this is free in the sense of Black America being its own country within a country, right? Working together. The fact that we're not a monolith is our greatest strength. And if we could, again, unite under this vision of freedom, I think everyone could find a lane in how that works as Black America inside of America as a whole, right? So we are our own political unit, we are our own economic unit, our own, have our own religious factions, our own educational system, all of that, because there are needs that are specific to us that no one who's not us can really address, right? And I know that we have a lot of trauma to work through, but we have to do it in a way that's safe for us, which means we can't be inviting all these other folks in to certain spaces, right? We need Black-only spaces because for 401 years, we have had to exist in white-only spaces, even in Black-only spaces, right? So being free means to be free of the white gaze and of the enslaved mindset that Naim Akbar writes about in Breaking the Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery. But just follow me. Here's something I think is interesting. When people say, oh, we can't do it. Well, in pure economic terms, Africa's largest economy is Nigeria, and it has $380 billion. South Africa, that's their gross domestic product annually. South Africa is second with $350 billion, right? Black America, if we looked at Black America as a country, Black America has a GDP of $1.3 trillion, which makes us the 14th largest economy in the world. The 14th largest economy in the world, and we are considered a minority in America. It's not about spending power. It's about economic power connected to political will and spiritual will to be self-determining. With $1.3 trillion directed in the right place, there's nothing that we could not do in a capitalist society. The only thing that holds us back in a capitalist society is that we believe that we cannot do something. It's like, again, Ibram Kendi says in his book, Stamped from the Beginning, in uncovering his own racialized identity in the way that we all have been socialized in a racist construct in America, he realized that he only thought, to many extents, that Black people were inferior because somebody, white America, told him Black people were inferior, which included himself. And he only believed that white people were superior because white people told him white people were superior, right? So if we took times like this, Juneteenth, to really think through and get rid of all that superior, inferior foolishness and understand that as human beings, not only are we equal, but we're better together, and we pulled this $1.3 trillion that we have just from Black people in America. Forget about connecting to Nigeria, the rest of the continent, and the diaspora. That puts us in an even better financial standing as a connected diaspora, a united Africa. But just African Americans alone, with $1.3 trillion, we can do a lot of things with that, right? So when I think about what it means to be free, truly free, to me, the first thing I start with is self-determination, right? $1.3 trillion is enough for us to be self-determining. I'm going to play something else. So, self-determining. Black America has a GDP of $1.3 trillion. As a country, we are the 14th largest economy. There's a lot that we can do, right? And there's a lot we have to overcome. So don't get me wrong. I understand what the barriers are. But if we're not going to be given justice, then we have to take it, right? Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. And protest is great, riots are good. Both are tactics of a larger strategy. We need to define that strategy based on our collective image of what freedom looks like, right? And because I said and think that a lot of folks who are talking about this have not outlined what freedom looks like, I want to outline my thoughts of what that looks like. And then we can talk about it later, right? KRS-One in his recent release, Streetlight, said the world is mind. And what he's saying on that record is how you perceive things is how you manifest things, right? So if we operate from a deficit position, we will always be in a deficit position. But if we operate from a position of power, then we will begin to exercise like we have power, because as Stokely Carmichael says, power begins at the point of conception. We have power as soon as we agree and believe that we have power. Agree with each other and believe in ourselves that we are powerful. In purely, again, economic terms, $1.3 trillion is a form of power. What's a greater form of power is how we see ourselves as people, as human beings, right? As a collection of Africa's children in a strange land still that has the power to make that land their own, right? Everything that we touch, we can own. And everywhere that we see in the world, we can help build an equitable and just environment for our people. It's up to us to see that, and it's up to us to do that, right? And nobody, as my father again says, will finance your own liberation. But with $1.3 trillion, I don't know that we need anybody to. And at the point where we're doing the work ourselves, it compels other people around the world who know the story, because we're telling it the way it needs to be told, to do what they can to right these wrongs, right? But here's what I think. When Black America is free, we will know it because we are practicing daily the 7 principles of Kwanzaa as an example, right? What is that? We are united. We see each other as ourselves, not as competition, not as enemies, right? But we are working together for the common good of our people. So we are united, right? Again, our not being a monolith is our greatest strength. We are self-determining, Kuji Chagalia, right? Freedom ain't free. And so because we're self-determining, we are putting our resources, our sweat equity, and our education, and everything that we are toward the liberation of our people every day. No matter where you work, no matter where you go to church, no matter how you think and do, all of that is aligned with the freedom principle for Black America. Ujima, collective work and responsibility, right? Because everything's aligned, that means it's easier for us to work collectively toward our goals, right? And that doesn't just mean supporting Black businesses, Black banks, all that kind of stuff. It means saying hi to each other on the street, right? It means smiling and feeling like we don't have to put a face on when we leave our homes so people won't mess with us, right? It shifts the vibration from the hood to the burb. Wherever you happen to be, if you are Black and you see another Black person, you welcome that energy and you exchange. Hey, how's it going, brother, sister, mother, auntie, uncle, right? Whatever it is. We're working collectively and we are responsible for each other. Ujima. Ujama, cooperative economics. We're leveraging that $1.3 trillion to do what needs to be done. Building our own schools, building our own neighborhoods, building our own churches and places of worship, building connectivity with the diaspora in terms of our own business, international business exchanges, right? All of these things that our ancestors died for in Oklahoma and in East St. Louis and in Rosewood and in North Carolina, all of these various places, they were doing those things, right? But we have to continue that work. Nia, purpose, right? If we understand our purpose, then we understand how to get to the end and why that's important, the end being our collective freedom. Kuumba, creativity. We're the most creative people on the planet, right? Nobody before us thought that they could do something good with pig intestines. Like, that's what we did. Soul food might not be good for you, but it got us through tough times, and it was the sign of our resilience and creativity to make delicacies out of leftovers, right? And then Imani, faith. We have to believe in ourselves and each other, right? So we're practicing this daily, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. You can look it up. As a result of practicing those behaviors and loving ourselves, we will control our own food supply, right? From black farmers to black tables. We will control our own means of production, right? So that means if you are a grocery store, everything in your grocery store, from how it got there to where it came from, is black owned. Everything, right? We'll control our own politicians at every level: judges, district attorneys, police, schools, colleges, religious and spiritual institutions. All of that will be ours. The practices will be germane to who we are, right? We don't have to copy Europe. We don't have to copy anything because we created everything Europe does. They are copying us. So we just have to return to the source, and the source is us, right? We will be engaged in commerce throughout the diaspora, acknowledging that we are a global majority. We can no longer see and accept the narrative of deficit and being a minority, right? We are not minor, we are major. We have to see that in ourselves. We will control our images and story by controlling our own media and entertainment outlets, right? Nobody needs to tell us who we are. We need to now control that narrative. We'll control our own neighborhoods. We'll control our own destiny. Then we will decide how we engage the rest of America and the world on our own terms, right? Black America is like the horse that's tethered to a plastic chair. Because it's been socialized, it thinks that chair is holding it down. That chair is racism. And racism works, obviously, but it can only continue to work if we allow it. We can't do anything about police, but we cannot be afraid of the police. We can't do anything about Trump except vote, but we can't be afraid of Trump and Moscow Mitch McConnell and all those folks, right? We have to be self-determining, come what may. And if we continue to do what we need to do for ourselves and each other, whatever outcomes come from them that are negative, the outcomes that are good for us will far outweigh those negatives, right? Power concedes nothing without demand. And the demand is not a request. The demand is something that you know that you have power to bring to bear, right? So I am demanding from Black America that we take it upon ourselves to be ourselves. Happy Juneteenth. Oh, don't forget, we've got stuff. Ruth and I launched a podcast. You can find it on iTunes and Spotify called Drumversations with Mark and Ruth. And we've got the suite and the curriculum. Again, that self-determining thing, the curriculum is really helpful in understanding that history. Oh, and if you dug what's going on, please share, like and share all of this stuff, so it helps us, not just build the platform, but get the information out to more people. Thank you, and happy Freedom Day.